You are listening to Weekend Debrief, a podcast of Grace Church in Dallas, Oregon, where we look back at the events and activities of the weekend in our church community and the world and talk about them in light of the gospel. Thank you for listening. Well, welcome to Weekend Debrief, Pastor Dave and
Pastor Wes.
Yeah, we're glad you're joining us and came off a great week. We were off last week. Mm-hmm. I was out of the office and so had our first two outdoor worship and prayer nights. And then also Pastor Ryan spoke this last weekend.
Yeah.
So
yeah, the prayer and worship nights have been really good. We had 75 people there the first night. We had 100 just this last Sunday, and just a good time to be able to pray together, be able to hear others sing outside of just. I love the sound of my wife's voice, but it an awesome thing when we can all get together and sing.
Yeah. In my house, it's my daughter Callie's voice that kind of is the loudest and the most prominent, and so as good as that is to be with family, it's great to be with the church family. And first week was a little chilly out there, but then it warmed up, and last week was really nice, and this upcoming week should be perfect.
It's gonna be
so
really nice.
We hope you can join us for that. And if you haven't come yet, just for what you can anticipate, we'll spend some time worshiping and singing praises, time praying. Short devotional from God's Word just to direct the time. This upcoming week, our theme is going to be confession and just spending time looking at our hearts, looking at God, seeing where the gap is and confessing those things like 1 John 1:9 talks about. When we confess, we are free from those things and because of what Christ did on the cross. So just a great time. And so bring your own chair or blanket. We had families on blankets and chairs. And it's just a pretty relaxed but meaningful time.
It is, 45 minutes to an hour, and we have things wrapped up. So, so with that, we do have, and you'll see on Friday when the email comes out from the office, links to be able to look at the song list and the different prayer starters that'll be available. So you can either print that at home or just have it right there on your phone through the Church Center app and click on the resources link. And then we will have limited copies if you're not able to do that either way, but that'd be the preference would be to either print it off or use the digital copy.
And as we've been doing the bulletins going out digitally, we have the Sunday morning online service packet that goes out on that Friday and on the resource page. So lots of things to be involving yourself with what's going on. And moving forward, even when we start gathering in the building again, a lot of the resources like the bulletin and things, we're going to be strictly digital, at least for the time being, which is honestly more convenient. We all know what you do with your bulletins after you leave the building. I mean, let's just be honest. So all that will be just digitally, but also we're able to put links in there so you can go directly to the different, sign-ups or events or whatever that we're promoting through the bulletin. So it's more convenient that way, but also it's a little safer. We don't have to worry about, passing germs and that kind of thing via paper and that kind of stuff. So all of those resources on the resource page on our website or through the Church Center app is the easiest way to get that. And just be ready for that. We've been working hard on getting things up and running and ready for August 2nd. We're still, even though there's been kind of a reversal, maybe a little bit of more restrictions because of the increase in the COVID cases, the outbreaks. We're still on track for August 2nd. That's our target date. And so we're hoping and praying that we're still able to gather at that time. And but also we've been working on the live stream option.
I'm really looking forward to that. I think it's going to be really good. So we've got the technology in place here at the church to be able to put that together, and I think the exciting thing about it is that I know that there's different stages in which people are going to feel confident to be able to come back and comfortable to come back to church, but it's still going to then allow us to feel that connection with each other, because it's the service is actually taking place at that time. it obviously doesn't substitute for being here in person, but it will be really close to that.
Yeah.
So,
and we've heard from people who have said, it's going to be a while before I'm comfortable coming into the building,
Right.
because they have a pre-existing condition, or they're immune compromised in some way, or they're elderly and just concerned, because it does seem to have a much greater danger to the elderly. And so for those folks, and even we've heard from younger families who have children who are getting treatments for different things, and so they're just cautious in coming back, and the concern there, and that's valid and good. And so we have to understand there, regardless of where each of us falls ourselves, we have a church body of almost 500 people, including kids, and people in various stages of vulnerability, and also different just feelings when it comes to this. And we want to be accommodating to the entire Grace Church family. And so that's why we're taking these precautions. That's why we're going to have the live stream option. Why we started outdoors to begin with, to regather and those things, and why we are going to encourage the state restriction on masks indoors. And we want to also, all of us, to be wearing masks unless there's a medical condition that prohibits that, out of safety and concern for those who have those risks.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And then between each of the services, then we will go through and make sure that bathrooms are disinfected, all door handles, knobs, and make sure that things are ready for the next service to come in. So a little bit different in that we're going to be more. It's kind of be a tighter service time wise, right?
Yeah. So because we are going to start off with 3 services. 8 o'clock, 9:30, and 11. That means to be able to have the time in between services to clean and make sure everyone from the first service is out, to make way for the second and then make way for the third. We're going to keep the services to an hour or under. And so, and just want to remind everyone that 8 o'clock service we are reserving that for immune compromised, elderly, vulnerable folks, to make sure, and we really are asking that everyone that comes to that service is in that category, that we're wearing masks, that we're doing everything we can to be safe, because that population we're intending that to be those who are more at risk, so that we can keep them safer. So the building will be the cleanest, because no one will have been in there yet, and then they'll be able to go out, and then our second and third services will be family style, and in the beginning those will be the ones we live stream, and then we'll eventually, depending on which of those live stream services are more popular, we'll probably narrow down and just target ongoing one service that will be our main live stream service.
One of the questions that may come up is, so we're doing second and third service as a family style, so kids are welcome, encouraged to be there. We do have, working with Carissa, and she's putting together some different things that kids will be able to do during the service, that will be productive, and then just as far as parents, I mean, having had young kids at that time, at that age, bring some things for them to to do, and obviously leave the Nerf guns and the noisemaker toys at home.
There you go.
Crayons, paper to write on, and one of the things that kids can do is, even at young elementary age, and is to be able to really kind of listen to some things that you're speaking on, or the music that's playing, and have them draw a picture that kind of. So what are you, as a encourage your child, what are you hearing, and then draw out a picture of what that might be, and just different ways to try and engage them into the service. So
and we recognize, with families, we've done family services before for different events and things. We recognize there's going to be some disruption. It's not going to be exactly like it is when it's mainly adults or youth and adults, and that's okay. We're comfortable with that. I have young kids. You used to have young kids. Ryan has young kids. David has infant. So we're used to noise and disruption and distraction, and that's okay.
It's okay.
And then we are targeting the fall for some more expansion of kids programs and youth programs and those things, depending on what we're able to do at that time. But that is when we're targeting those things to restart.
So a couple other things, as far as just to make sure that people are aware of, that we are currently working on and making sure that we have all details figured out is running the bus on Sunday. We're working on details, what that needs to look like, and then also what it looks like to open up the nursery and the toddler rooms. And that may happen before that September date, but we're just making sure that we're going to have the staff to be able to handle that. Amy Gilson's working on making sure that as far as requirements, that we're meeting all state requirements for having that available.
Yeah, so obviously we don't do anything that puts young families or children at risk. Right. And so whereas it's a much, the risk is a lot less for kids. There still is a risk for everyone. You never right. and for caring to others, and so we want to just make sure that we're being as safe as possible with our kids.
Yeah, that's good. So with all of that, I mean, it feels like there's just so much coming at us with that. What a timely message when we think about what Ryan preached on Sunday, Psalm 3. Mm-hmm. And really, even his first point, don't be surprised by trouble.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And his analogy of the shield, God is a shield around us. His analogy of or example of the in the paintball. Mm-hmm. So when you think of God as a shield around you, what comes to mind? What does that do for you when you hear that?
Yeah, I think so. You have to take that for how it was intended to be received. Mm-hmm. So we understand that Psalms is a different genre, mm-hmm. right? And so when language like he's a refuge or a shield or those kinds of things that often is used in the book of Psalms, mm-hmm. those images, right. We must understand that that's poetic, mm-hmm. And so there's meaning behind the words that isn't, so God isn't literally a physical shield that's guarding us from actual like live ammunition or right. something. Right. No, he is that protection. He is that gives us that confidence. I can rely and trust him. Yeah. And that at the end of the day, whatever it comes against us, we will be able to be victorious over that. That's already been not only promised but assured right. through the cross. That because of Jesus, we know that the Romans 8:28. At the end of the day, those who love Christ and are called according to his purpose, everything does eventually work together for good. Mm-hmm. And that good is to make us more and more like Jesus. Right. And so that's what I think of when, and that when I pray, God is listening. Mm-hmm. That when I'm worried, God comforts and gives me that confidence and care. And so he is that protection, that shield, mm-hmm. For us, and because of that, it leads into some of the other points that Ryan had. We can rest, we can sleep, right. we can know that we don't have to be on all the time and holding on to everything and being in control of everything, mm-hmm. or try to maintain control over things, because ultimately we can rest well at night knowing God is caring for us.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's several passages a couple that Ryan had talked about that indicate that, and when we studied 1 Peter, that don't be surprised by the trials and don't be surprised that these things are going to happen. One of the references that Ryan had talked about was in John 16:33, where it was just speaking that we are going to face trials. And this world we will have suffering in this right. world, but it said, take comfort because I have overcome the world.
Right. And I think he even says, I tell you this, that you have peace.
Right.
And then he says, you're going to have trouble. Okay, wait. You're telling me that I'm going to have trouble so that I have peace. But the comfort is he's overcome the world that's going to give us trouble.
Yeah. Yeah. So that when you're talking about the shield and that protection, and knowing that Christ has already overcome the world, there is that, to me, that it just kind of takes a weight off and go, right. It's easy to say, well, then don't worry about it. I mean, now putting that into practice is a whole nother thing.
Absolutely, yeah.
But there's that confidence that we can have to not have that worry and that anxiety and that mm-hmm. kind of, we don't have to sit there and wring our hands and going, man, what's going to happen next? And I think even Ryan's second point is, God's got you.
Right. Yeah. So we've had COVID. We're having protests and rioting and division and all that. So when the killer hornets hit, we know that even through that, right?
Even through that, right?
that God's got us, and we can rest in that and find comfort in that. And man, what a good encouragement.
Absolutely.
Because I mean, not killer hornets, but what else is going to happen this year, right? I mean, if you had tried to tell me that these things were going to happen last year, I would no way. You know what I mean? Like it's crazy,
especially in a 4-month window,
right? And but it happened, and more will happen, and you know, we the world isn't necessarily getting better, right? But like you said, you know, God has overcome the world, and so we can have that peace and comfort, and you know, that image of the shield. If the language of the Bible is God is your refuge in the storm, He's a shield in the battle, He's these things, then that just does show you that we have to expect trouble, that it's going to happen. Otherwise, why would we need to be told that God is our shield and our refuge and this, you know, comfort in the storm, and unless the storm's on its way, unless the attack is on its way. And for David, it was his own son turning against him and trying to overthrow his kingdom, and who would have seen that coming? A son that when he's killed, David grieves deeply because he loves his son so much, and yet that son turns against him. We won't always see where that attack is going to come from.
But isn't it interesting when you look at examples like David and Absalom and other stories that we know actually happened, and then we look at our situation and go, well, you know what? Those things that we read about in the Old Testament and even New Testament, things that happened, they would still be making headline news today. So while our situation may look a little bit different, the scope and the suffering and the worry that is possibly there really is probably not any greater than what the people of the Old Testament were facing.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, we hear about the COVID crisis and all of that, and there are people who have been impacted way more than I have for sure. But you know, I can kind of bemoan the fact, oh man, my life stinks. You know, we've got all these restrictions, and I have to wear a mask when I go to Walmart, and you know, all these things. But I mean, like last night, Amy and I went out on a date, and you know, we had to wear masks when we got our food, but then we went outside and sat and had a good time. And you know, life's pretty good, even with all the trials and things. Life's pretty good, and we have to remember that, and especially in the U.S., we face, you know, some things, but it really is a lot less than believers are facing in other parts of the world. You know, you think about persecution and those things, where really it's legitimate persecution. It isn't just, you know, stepping on, you know, on our toes and you know, disrupting our freedoms. No, it's legitimate, actual, intense persecution because of faith in Jesus. And we got to keep these things all in perspective, biblically, of what the past has in the past has happened, but also what is currently happening around the world.
Exactly.
To those who, when they read, you know, that God has got them, that has an even more significant application to them, because for them to actually even hold a church service is putting their own lives and their families at risk, physical risk.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's good. So all of that, and I love just the picture there at the end of being able to lie down and sleep and have that refreshing time. But then to just how David ends the passage, rise up, save me, God. There's a humility there of him recognizing he can't save himself, but a confidence that, and it's not just a oh God, save me. I mean, it's rise up, save me, my Lord, save me, God. And what a great example for us to have that kind of confidence and humility.
And it's amazing to see. So we're now into a section of the book of Psalms that are Psalms of David. They're identified, and we've come out of, you know, Psalm 1 and 2, which really gives an introduction to the entire book. But it's great to see how Psalm 3 builds on what we heard in Psalms 1 and 2. So Psalm 1, you know, the one who is planted by the stream, who is meditating on Scripture, who is following the way of the righteous, he can find that security, right? And then the one who's submitting to the King, to that we found out is Jesus, anticipating Jesus, but the one who is submitting to that anointed one of God and God's will, he's the one that, and she is the one that is able to have that confidence,
right.
and can rest at night, because they're relying on God's word, they're submitting to God's King, Jesus, and that person is the person who can have confidence.
Right. Yeah.
Psalm 3 doesn't make sense without submitting to Psalm 1 and 2.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's the call. So if we have that hope of Psalm 1 and 2, if that's where we're planted and where we rely on, then we can have that confidence in trouble.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm looking forward to being able to dig into Psalm 4.
Yeah, so Pastor Wes is going to be preaching this upcoming Sunday.
Yeah, and so what we see in Psalm 4 then builds off of 1, 2, and 3, and it's going to be it's a great short psalm, but really some great instruction for us. I know my toes have been stepped on as I'm reading through that, so yeah, you go, okay, all right, there's something there for us.
Yeah. So buckle up. Be ready. And no, it's great though to just hear these, especially you think of David. I mean, in the Old Testament especially, I mean, he's on the Mount Rushmore of folks, right?
Yeah.
Moses, Abraham, David. He makes the list, right? Maybe Elijah, I don't know, whoever you put on that last. But you're hearing his heart.
Yeah.
And he's not holding back.
Right.
I mean, it's raw. It's full of emotion and passion, and I mean, even to the point where he's crying out for his enemies to have their teeth smashed in, right?
Yeah.
And it's interesting because some people take that and are offended by it. What brutal language, and see the Bible is just a violence, and well, these were people hunting him.
Right.
And I love what Ryan said, his explanation of that, of what's the most dangerous part of a dog. It's the teeth. You remove the teeth and they're no longer a threat. So it's really him crying out to the Lord, take away the threat of my enemy, judge my enemy. And so we see that raw emotion of fear, of doubt, of concern, but faith in God, and then turning to God to take care of the problem.
Yeah, it's a great picture.
And don't we often, when you think about the wicked in the world and those who are abusing and doing evil to others, don't we also want God to knock their teeth out?
Yeah.
I mean, you think about it, it really is, it's the language of the righteous when looking at the wicked to say, God, take care of this.
Yeah.
Like, don't let this happen any longer.
Right. Yeah, I agree. That is, there is so much there for us, and I'm glad that we have decided to go through. You made the decision for us to go through Psalms this summer, and who would have known how how timely this was for us.
Absolutely. So, Hey, here's a question. So on that, because it is one, and I've read it as often as an objection to, especially the Old Testament, but to the Bible in general, when you hear that language that, break the teeth of the wicked and that kind of thing, and then you hear Jesus say, but love your enemies, pray for those who harm you, and that, how do you reconcile those concepts? And is that a contradiction? Is it a Old Testament versus New Testament ethic? Is it Old Testament angry God, New Testament loving Jesus? Like what? How do we think through that concept?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Well, I think one of the things that I have to always go back to is that the God of the Old Testament is still the God of the New Testament. So how things have changed, there is no change in God. But I think that we see one of the things that you just talked about is that raw emotion. It's removing that threat. We may not say it the same way, but for us to pray and ask God to remove the threat of an enemy or someone who is attacking us. And really, I mean, this was an unjust attack.
Right.
And I think if we're honest, we would, if someone was wanting to physically harm us, I know I would be praying, Lord, remove that attack.
Right.
I don't know how you're going to do it, Lord, but do it, remove it so that it is no longer over me. Now, how I respond to that person, I think there's a heart behind that I need to continue to show the love of Christ to them. While they may be my enemy and wanting to harm me, the heart of Jesus says I need to be praying for them to come to know who He is. And so maybe that removal of that attack is for their heart to be open to the gospel.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That's kind of how I see the reconciling between what we see in the Old Testament, that raw language, versus, and we don't have much more insight into that, but
yeah. No, I think that's a great way to look at it, and I think when we try to pit those views against each other, we get into trouble. It can be a both and, not, it doesn't have to be an either or.
Right.
We can at the same time want an attack to end, really struggle with loving or accepting someone who is coming at us like that, who is a legitimate threat, while at the same time making the choice to love and pray for them in the midst of that.
Yeah.
And so we can want the threat to end, for enemies to be judged, for the wicked to be judged, while also hoping they find Jesus. And so those can be simultaneous.
Yeah.
Emotions are emotions. So we can express that desire. And we have to remember, again, the what we're told about this psalm, a psalm of David when he fled from his son Absalom. So the one he's praying, that his enemy literally is his own son.
Right.
And as I said earlier, the son who, when his son dies, David is brokenhearted.
Right. Yeah.
He loves his son while also praying that God would end the threat of his son.
Right. Yeah.
And in the midst of praying that God would judge his enemy, tells his own men, "Don't kill my son."
Right.
So right there you see a love for a person that you're praying against.
Yeah.
And that's legitimate and good and okay. And so love your enemy. It doesn't mean they're not my enemy anymore.
Sure.
It doesn't mean that I have to let them walk over me or continue to abuse me or anything like that. But it does mean that I make that choice to love them and pray for them, even though they're my enemy, even though they're harming me. Exactly. And so it's not an either or; it's a both and.
Right. Yeah. No, I think that's great. Even as a parent, I mean, you think when you have to discipline your kids, and depending on the severity of the situation or whatever, but I think as a parent, I want God to do what God needs to do to get their attention, and I don't want to stand in the way of that.
Right.
So to me, it's kind of it is kind of that thing of saying, Lord, deal with them, and I'm turning them over to you. I love them and I'm praying for them, but be at work in their life, and however you got to do that.
Yeah, that's really good. Yeah. Really good. Looking forward to Psalm 4 next week and continuing through, and also our worship night, 7 o'clock down on the field. Bring blankets, chairs, whatever.
Yeah, it's going to be a good time.
Yeah, looking forward to seeing you there.
All right, have a good week.